They had already decided she was a murderess before I reached the top of the stairs. I heard it in the long gallery, the housekeeper's voice, thick and certain, carrying up to me through the November gloom. It was the companion, sir. It could be no one else. She mixed the old lady's tonics with her own 2 hands every night, and now the old lady is dead. I stopped with my palm flat on the cold banister, and the thing I was known for, the coldness men called by my name, the cold Duke of Harrowmere, closed over my face like a visor. My great-aunt was 2 hours dead in the room at the end of that gallery, and already my own house had found someone to hang for it. I had ridden through the night from Harrowmere's North Farms to be at her bedside, and I had come too late. Lady Adelaide Sarton, 81 years old, sharp as a lancet to the last, the only creature alive who had ever made me laugh against my will, had died in her sleep sometime before dawn, and I had not held her hand at the end. That was the grief I carried up the stairs. What I found waiting at the top of them was a different thing entirely, and it burned the grief clean out of me for a moment, the way a hot iron drives the ache from a wound. They were gathered in the anteroom outside her chamber. Mrs. Pell, my housekeeper, wringing her apron. Dr. Ambrose, the district physician, gray and grave with his bag still in his hand. Sir Rufus Callow, the magistrate, a heavy man who wore his authority like a second waistcoat, too tight and always straining. And apart from them all, standing very straight against the wainscoting with 2 footmen posted on either side of her as though she might bolt, was a young woman I had met perhaps 3 times in my life and never truly looked at. I looked at her now. Imogen Hart, my aunt's companion these last 2 years, the physician's daughter from the village of Larkalow, the girl Lady Adelaide had plucked out of genteel poverty and installed at Harrowmere because my aunt had written to me, "She does not bore me, Julian, and at my age that is the rarest quality on God's earth." She was perhaps 24, dark hair drawn back plainly, a gray wool gown, no ornament of any kind. Her face was very pale. But it was not the pallor of guilt I had seen 100 times across 100 courtrooms of my own experience, the sweating, darting fear of a cornered thing. She stood with her chin level and her gray eyes fixed on the middle distance, and there was something in her stillness that was not the stillness of the caught but the stillness of the wronged. I have learned in the years since to trust that instinct above all the evidence in the world. That morning I did not yet trust it. I only noticed it. "Your Grace," Sir Rufus came at me at once, ponderous with importance. "A dreadful business, a dreadful, dreadful business. Allow me to offer my—" "What has happened to my aunt?" He blinked. "She has died, Your Grace, in the night." "I am aware that she has died." I asked what has happened to her. My voice, I am told, does something to a room when I am angry that no shout could accomplish. Sir Rufus took half a step back. It was Dr. Ambrose who answered, and I will say for the man that he had the decency to look uncomfortable. "Your Grace, Lady Adelaide was in her 82nd year and in failing health. In the ordinary way I should have signed the certificate without a second thought, and we should all have gone home to grieve her." He wet his lips. "But this morning, when I came to examine her, Mrs. Pell showed me a bottle, the tonic Lady Adelaide took each night for her heart. And the residue in it was not the tonic I prescribed." "What was it?" "Something a good deal stronger. Foxglove at a guess digitalis, but in a quantity that would stop an ox's heart, let alone an old woman's. It would look to the untrained eye like nothing more than a peaceful death in her sleep." He would not meet my eye now. "It was not a peaceful death, Your Grace. It was murder, and the tonic was in the keeping of Miss Hart." The anteroom held its breath. I felt every eye in it slide from me to the girl against the wall and back again, greedy for what I would do. I have spent a great deal of my life being the most feared man in 3 counties. I did not seek the reputation, but I did not refuse it either, for it kept fools at a distance and let me manage my lands in peace. I had buried a brother and a father before I was 30, and grief had made me hard, and hardness had made me solitary, and solitude I had mistaken, for a long time, for strength. What I am trying to tell you is that the man who turned to look at Imogen Hart that morning was not a kind man. He was a cold and exacting and lonely man who had just lost the last person who loved him, and who was being handed, on a silver salver, a simple story with a simple villain and a simple end. I very nearly took it. God forgive me, I very nearly took it. "Miss Hart," I said, "did you kill my aunt?" The footman shifted. Mrs. Pell gasped as though I had said something indecent by asking rather than assuming. And Imogen Hart turned her gray eyes on me, really looked at me. For the first time, the way one looks at a person one has decided to speak the truth to no matter what it costs, and said in a low, steady, unhurried voice, "No, Your Grace, I did not. I loved her, and I did not." That was all. She did not weep. She did not fall to her knees and clutch at my coat, as the guilty so often do, mistaking noise for innocence. She did not protest her devotion at length. She said 4 small sentences, and then she closed her mouth and waited, and I saw that her hands, folded before her, were trembling, not with the trembling of a liar, but with the effort of a proud person holding herself together in a room full of enemies. "She's had a night to think up her denials, Your Grace," said Mrs. Pell darkly, "and there's the jewels besides." "The jewels." Sir Rufus produced them, wrapped in a handkerchief with the air of a conjurer. My aunt's garnets, the ones she had worn every Sunday of my remembered life, the ones she had once let me play with as a boy, spilling the deep red stones through my fingers like drops of wine. "Found this morning," Sir Rufus said, "in Miss Hart's own room, in the bottom of her work-box beneath the mending. A poor companion, Your Grace, with no fortune of her own, and the old lady's most valuable jewels hidden among her sewing. The motive writes itself. She poisoned the tonic she had charge of, and she meant to be gone with the garnets before the death was ever questioned. It is only Dr. Ambrose's sharp eye that has caught her." I looked at the garnets in the magistrate's fat handkerchief. I looked at the pale, steady, trembling girl, and something small and cold and clear stirred at the back of my mind, the same faculty that had made me, whatever else I was, a man who managed 12,000 acres without being cheated by a single steward. It was this: a thief who has just murdered for a fortune in jewels does not leave that fortune in the bottom of her own workbox, under the mending, in the one room in the house that will be searched first. A thief who is clever enough to disguise a poisoning as a natural death, and it had been cleverly done. Dr. Ambrose himself said he had nearly signed the certificate, is not stupid enough to hide the loot in her own sewing basket. The two things did not fit together: a brilliant murder and an idiot's concealment. It was like finding a lock picked by a master craftsman, and then finding the burglar asleep on the hearthrug with his tools in his hand. I did not say any of this. I have never in my life been in the habit of thinking aloud, but I said to the room, "No one is to be arrested today." Sir Rufus's face went the color of a boiled ham. "Your Grace, with respect, this is a matter for the King's justice, not for. It is my aunt who is dead in my house, and it is my house's honor that hangs on getting it right rather than getting it quick." I let the coldness come fully into my voice now, and I watched it land. "You will not arrest anyone under my roof on the strength of a workbox and a housekeeper's certainty. Dr. Ambrose, you will say nothing to the coroner beyond the medical facts until I send for you. Miss Hart will remain at Harrowmere in her own room, and she will not be treated as a prisoner. Do I make myself understood?" "Your Grace," Sir Rufus tried again, "if she should flee." "Then I shall know she is guilty, and I shall hunt her down myself, and you may have her." I turned to Imogen Hart. "Will you flee, Miss Hart?" Her eyes came up to mine again. "I have nowhere to flee to, Your Grace," she said, "and I will not run from a thing I did not do. If I run, they will say it proves my guilt, and they will be free to stop looking for the truth. I would rather stay and let the truth be found." A pause. "If anyone will trouble to look for it." It was not quite an accusation. It was very nearly a challenge, and it went into me like a splinter and stayed there, and I have never in the years since been able to get it out, nor have I wished to. Someone will look for it, I said. I did not yet know that the someone would be me. I could not sleep that first night. I sat up in my study with a single branch of candles and my aunt's tonic bottle before me on the desk, and I turned it in my fingers and made myself think. Grief is a poor companion for reason. It wants a shape, a story, an ending, and it will take the first one offered rather than sit in the terrible open question of a loss. All around me the house had already seized its story, the poor, clever, penniless companion who had grown greedy. It was a satisfying story. It cost the rest of the household nothing. It required no one to look inward. And that, more than anything, was what made me distrust it. For I had learned, managing men and money, that the story which costs the teller nothing is the story to examine most closely of all. So I made myself lay the facts out cold, as I would lay out a disputed account. Fact, my aunt had died of an overdose of foxglove, administered in her nightly tonic. Fact, Miss Hart mixed and gave that tonic, but so I made myself remember did others touch it. The bottle sat on my aunt's washstand all day, in a room that a dozen servants passed through. The still room where the tonic was compounded was not locked. Anyone in the house, or anyone admitted to the house, might have tampered with it. Fact, the garnets were found in Miss Hart's workbox, but this fact fought the first one. A woman clever enough to poison undetectably was not a woman careless enough to hide jewels in her own mending, unless she had not hidden them there at all, unless another hand had put them there. Fact, and this was the one that had been troubling me since the anteroom, sitting just beneath my grief like a stone under still water. My aunt had been perfectly well 3 days before. I had a letter from her, dated the Tuesday, in her own firm hand, and it was not the letter of a dying woman. It was the letter of a woman planning her Christmas and complaining about her nephew's continued bachelorhood. "You will die alone in this great cold barn of a house, Julian," she had written, "and I shall have to come back and haunt you into some sense, which will be very tiring for us both." If she had been in failing health, as Ambrose said, it was a failing that had come on with remarkable speed. I sat with that a long time. And then I did the thing that changed everything, though it seemed a small thing at the time. I went to find Imogen Hart. It was past midnight. I found her not in her room but in my aunt's, sitting in the dark beside the bed where the old woman still lay, keeping the vigil that no one else in that house of accusers had thought to keep. She had lit a single candle at the bedside. She had folded my aunt's hands. She had, I saw, brushed out the old woman's thin white hair and arranged it as my aunt had liked to wear it, and she had put a sprig of dried lavender in her hands because my aunt had loved the smell of it. A murderess does not do these things for her victim in the dark, alone, when no one is watching to be impressed. She was not weeping now either. She was simply sitting with the dead, the way you sit with someone you loved, so that they will not be alone on their first night of being gone. She did not startle when I came in. "I hope you don't mind, Your Grace," she said quietly, not turning. I couldn't bear to think of her lying here with no one. She was afraid of the dark at the end. Most people don't know that about the very old. They come back round to being afraid of the dark like children. I've been telling her it's morning soon. I stood in the doorway and something in my chest, some long frozen thing, cracked very slightly along a seam. "Miss Hart," I said, "I need you to tell me everything, every detail of the last 3 days. Not your defense. I don't want your defense. I've heard 100 defenses and they teach me nothing. I want the facts. When did she first seem unwell? Who came to the house? Who had reason to be near her tonic? Leave nothing out, however small, however much it seems to have nothing to do with anything, especially the things that seem to have nothing to do with anything." I drew a chair to the other side of the bed and sat, so that my dead aunt lay between us like a witness. "I do not know yet whether you are innocent, but I know that the story they have made of it is a lie somewhere, and I mean to find where. Help me." She turned then and looked at me for a long moment in the candlelight, and I watched her decide, once again, to trust me. A decision I had done nothing to earn and everything, by reputation to forbid. 3 days ago, she began, your cousin Mr. Ames arrived. Roderick Ames was my cousin on my mother's side, and he was next after me in the line of my aunt's affections and, more to the point, her fortune. Lady Adelaide had money of her own, a great deal of it, left by her long-dead husband and grown under her own shrewd management. And it was no secret in the family that a good part of it would go to Roderick when she died, my own coffers being full enough. He was a handsome, easy, laughing man of 35, always beautifully dressed, always a little short of ready cash, always on his way to or from some house party where the play was deep. I had never much liked him and never much distrusted him either. He was too indolent, I had always thought, for real villainy. Villainy is work. He came Thursday, Imogen said. For a visit, he said, to see his aunt before the winter closed the roads, but he was agitated, your grace. Not in his manner was all charm as always. But he asked her that first evening about her affairs, whether her will was in order, whether she had considered how cruel it was to leave a young man to wait on an old woman's health for his prospects. He said it lightly, laughing, but she did not laugh. She sent him to bed early, and she was very quiet after, and when I helped her undress she said a strange thing. She said, Imogen, I think I shall change my will in the morning. Roderick has shown me something tonight I did not want to see. I sat very still. Did she change it? She meant to. She had me send a note to Mr. Foljambe, her solicitor in Wexford, first thing Friday, asking him to attend her Monday next on urgent business. The note went. I gave it to the footman myself. Her hands twisted in her lap. She never lived to Monday. Where is that note now? Is there proof of it? Mr. Foljambe will have received it Saturday. It was in her hand, she wrote it herself. She never trusted me with anything to do with the will. She said it wasn't fair to me. And she stopped. And Mr. Ames knew of it. He came upon me in the hall as I was giving it to the footman. He asked, all lightness, what business I was about, and I told him I saw no reason not to, that Lady Adelaide had summoned her solicitor. He smiled and said how wise and how tiresome these legal matters were, and he went out to ride. Her gray eyes lifted to mine, and I saw that she had understood, somewhere in the long dark of that night's vigil, exactly what she was telling me. He knew, your grace. He knew she meant to change her will Monday, and she died Sunday night. The candle guttered. Between us, my aunt lay with her lavender in her folded hands, and it seemed to me, in that swimming light, that a very great and terrible thing had just been said in her hearing, and that she approved of its being said. That, I said slowly, is a reason, it is not proof. A man may be glad of a death without having caused it. Half of England is glad of some rich relation's death. I cannot break my cousin, whatever I think of him, on the ground that he wanted money and got it. I need to know how. If he poisoned that tonic, he must have got to it. He must have got the foxglove. And he must have, if he is the one who framed you, and I begin to think he is, he must have got the garnets into your workbox. Every one of those is a thing that leaves a trace, Miss Hart. A man cannot buy poison and steal jewels and plant them and leave no trace at all. Somewhere there is a thread hanging loose. We are going to find it, and we are going to pull it, and we are going to unravel the whole clean garment of this lie. I had said we. I heard myself say it, so did she. Why? She asked. It was not coy, it was genuine bewilderment. Forgive me, your grace, but you don't know me. You have every reason to want this over quickly and quietly. The easy answer costs you nothing and clears your family name in a single afternoon. Why should you take the harder road for a companion you've met 3 times, whom the whole world has already condemned? I might have said many things. That justice was owed to my aunt, whatever the cost. That I had never in my life been able to leave a false account unbalanced. Those things were true, but the thing I said, and I did not plan to say it, was the truest of all. Because you sat with her in the dark so she would not be afraid, I said, and whatever else may be so, that is not the act of the person they have made you out to be. I would rather be wrong 3 days later than cruel this same night. Now, Mr. Foljambe, we ride to Wexford at first light, and I want the still room locked, and the tonic bottle in my own keeping, and I want to know the name of every apothecary within a day's ride who sells foxglove. We begin at dawn." She looked at me for a moment longer. And then Imogen Hart did a thing I have never forgotten and never deserved. In the middle of the worst night of her life, accused of a hanging crime, with the only powerful man in her world declaring himself uncertain of her innocence, she smiled. A small, tired, wondering smile. "Then I had better mend my boots tonight," she said. "It's a long ride to Wexford, and I mean to be there when you find your thread, your grace. It's my neck it hangs from. I'd like to see it pulled." "God help me," I nearly smiled back. We did not ride to Wexford alone, of course. Even in the midst of a murder, a duke must think of a companion's reputation, and I would not have Imogen Hart cleared of poisoning only to be ruined by gossip. My aunt's elderly maid, Beckett, rode with us in the carriage, disapproving of the whole enterprise and saying so at intervals. But she came, because when I told her plainly that I believed Miss Hart innocent and meant to prove it, the old woman's mouth had worked and she had said, "Lo, I never believed it neither, your grace. I've dressed that girl's hair and I've watched her nurse my lady through 3 fevers, and she's no more a murderess than I am. But who was going to listen to me?" And I understood with a slow shame that the house had not been unanimous at all, that there had been those who doubted, Beckett and 1 or 2 others, and that their doubt had simply been drowned under the louder, easier certainty of the rest. The truth is nearly always in the house somewhere. It is only that we do not trouble to listen to the servants who hold it. Mr. Foljambe received us in his cold Wexford chambers with the wary courtesy of a man who does not know why a duke has descended upon him. But when I told him what had passed, his long face lengthened further, and he went to a locked press and drew out a paper. "I received Lady Adelaide's summons Saturday morning," he said, "in her own hand. She asked me to attend her Monday on a matter of urgency concerning her will. She wrote here, 'I have discovered I have been a foolish old woman about someone I trusted, and I mean to put it right before I die, which I do not intend to do for some years yet.'" He looked up. I was troubled by the tone. "I confess I set out yesterday, Sunday, of my own accord. I thought a matter that agitated her so might not wait for Monday. I arrived at Harrowmere late Sunday afternoon." I went very still. "You were at Harrowmere Sunday afternoon, the afternoon before she died?" "I was, your grace. I asked to see Lady Adelaide, but I was told by a gentleman, a Mr. Ames, who met me in the hall, that she had taken to her bed unwell and could see no one, and that he would convey any message to her. I gave him my card. I said I would return Monday as arranged. He was most gracious." A pause. "I did not see Lady Adelaide. I did not know until your message this morning that she never rose from that bed." There it was, the first loose thread, hanging plain in the cold Wexford light. Roderick had turned the solicitor away at the door, the solicitor his aunt had summoned to disinherit him, and had kept it secret from the whole house. No one at Harrowmere had known Foljambe came. Imogen had not known. I had not known. Only Roderick. "Mr. Foljambe," I said, and my voice had gone to the place it goes when a fraud is finally in my hands, "I am going to ask you to write down everything you have just told me and sign it and date it, and I am going to ask you to keep the original of my aunt's letter in a very safe place, and then I am going to ask you one further thing." I leaned forward. "Under the will as it now stands, the will my aunt died before she could change, what does my cousin Roderick Ames inherit?" Foljambe consulted his papers, though I do not think he needed to. £18,000, your grace, and the house in Bath." £18,000, and the house in Bath. I thought of Roderick's beautiful coats and his empty pockets and his laughing questions across the dinner table 3 nights before his aunt's death. And I thought that men have hanged for a great deal less than £18,000 and killed for less still. I glanced at Imogen. She was sitting very upright, her hands folded, her face pale but composed, listening to £18,000 worth of motive settle onto another head than hers. and I saw the thing that had frightened me most all along begin, very slowly, to loosen its grip on her, the certainty, which she had carried into that anteroom and up those stairs, and into that dark vigil, that no one would ever look, and that she would hang for a truth no one wished to hear. "You believe me," she said softly in the carriage when we were rolling back toward Harrowmere through the failing amber afternoon. It was not a question. "You truly believe me now." "I believed you last night," I said. "Now I can begin to prove it. Those are different things, Miss Hart, and I will not lie to you about the distance between them. A man's belief hangs no one and clears no one. But proof—" I looked out at the bare hedgerows streaming past, the last brown leaves letting go. "Proof I can build, and I will build it if it takes me every hour I have." He turned the solicitor from the door. "That was a mistake. Guilt is a careful thing, but it cannot be careful about everything, and every mistake it makes is a thread. We have one. We shall find the others." "You keep saying we," she said. "Yes," I said, "I do." She was quiet a while. Beckett had fallen asleep in the corner, her mouth open, snoring gently. The carriage lamp swung, and the light of it slid back and forth across Imogen Hart's grave, intelligent face, and I who had not truly looked at a woman in years, I who had let grief and coldness wall me up alive in my great house, that I did not want to look away. "My father was a physician," she said at last, "apropsis of nothing, or so it seemed. In Larkalow, not a grand man. He set bones and delivered babies and sat up with the dying and was very often paid in eggs and firewood. But he taught me one thing above everything, and I think it is why I am not weeping in this carriage, Your Grace, though I have every reason to weep." She turned her gray eyes on me. "He taught me that the body does not lie. People lie with their words, their faces, their tears. But a fever tells the truth. A wound tells the truth. A poison tells the truth if you know how to read it. My father used to say, 'Imogen, listen to the patient's words with one ear and to the patient's body with the other, and when they disagree, believe the body.'" A faint, wry curve of her mouth. "Everyone at Harrowmere has been listening to the words. The housekeeper's words, the magistrate's words, my own frightened words. No one has listened to the body. No one has asked how a woman dies of foxglove." I turned fully toward her. "Tell me," I said, "how does a woman die of foxglove?" "And Imogen Hart, physician's daughter, accused murderess, the woman my whole household meant to hang, sat forward in the swaying carriage with a light coming up behind her eyes that I would come to know very well, and began to tell me, clearly, exactly, brilliantly, precisely how we were going to catch a killer. Here is what she taught me on that long ride home, and here is why it mattered. Foxglove, she said, does not kill cleanly or at once. In the dose that killed my aunt, it would have produced first a slowing and stumbling of the heart, a sickness, a strange yellow-green cast to everything the eyes beheld, as though the world had gone the color of old bruises, a great agitation, and then hours later the failing. She would not have gone quiet, Your Grace, Imogen said, and her voice caught for the first time, if she had taken a killing dose in her night tonic at 9 o'clock, as they say. She would have been sick in the small hours. She would have called out. She would have been found tangled in her bedclothes, not laid straight and peaceful. I have seen a foxglove death. It is not a gentle sleep. And Beckett, she nodded at the sleeping maid, Beckett found her at 7, laid straight, cold some hours, her face untroubled. That is not how she would have looked if the poison were in the 9 o'clock tonic. Unless, I said, following her now, my own pulse quickening, the poison was given later, much later, when she was already deep asleep and could not cry out. A dose given to a sleeping woman near dawn, strong enough to stop the heart before she ever woke to feel it. Yes, her eyes were bright. The tonic they found tampered with, I gave that tonic at 9, as I do every night, and she was perfectly well when I left her. If it had been poisoned, she would have suffered for hours and roused the house. She did not. So either the tonic was not the poison at all, or the poison was added to what was left in the bottle after I gave it, later in the night, by someone who came to her room while she slept, to make it look as though the murderer were the one who mixed the 9 o'clock dose. To make it look, Your Grace, like me. I sat back, cold all over, but it was the good cold now, the clean cold of a thing coming clear. Ambrose, I said, Ambrose must be made to say this, that the manner of the death does not fit the hour they've assigned it, that the body tells a different story than the workbox. Dr. Ambrose is a good man, but a country doctor who has seen one foxglove death in 30 years, and that a suicide, Imogen said. Saw an old heart stopped in a suspicious bottle and a poor companion, and he read them the way everyone reads them. But he is honest. If you take him back to her before she is buried, Your Grace, it must be before she is buried, and if I show him what to look for, the color of the tissues, the particular way she hesitated, sparing me, the particular signs, he will see that I am right. The body does not lie. It has been trying to tell the truth this whole time, and no one has asked it. So it was that I did a thing no duke in his senses does. I brought my aunt's accused murderess and my aunt's honest physician together over my aunt's own body, in the cold blue light of that Monday morning, and I stood at the foot of the bed with my hat in my hands and my jaw set, and I let a physician's daughter teach a doctor his own trade. And she was right. I will not set down here what she showed him. It is not fit for gentle listening, and my aunt deserves her dignity even in the telling. But I watched Dr. Ambrose's gray face change as she pointed quietly exactly to this sign and that. I watched him bend closer and go still and then say in a low, shaken voice, "Dear God, she's right. Your Grace, the girl is right. This death did not happen at 9 o'clock. This death happened near morning. I have been a fool. I saw what I was shown, and I did not look for what I was not shown." He straightened, and there were tears standing in the old man's eyes, tears of shame and grief together. "Miss Hart, I as good as put a rope round your neck yesterday. I beg your pardon. I beg it on my knees if you'll have it." "Keep your knees, doctor," Imogen said gently. "Just tell the truth now. That's all any of us can do for her." And she reached out and drew the sheet up tenderly over my aunt's face, and I saw that her hand was shaking again, and I understood that she had just been made to stand over the body of the woman she loved and prove a murder upon it to save her own life, and that this was a horror I could scarcely imagine, and that she had done it without a single false note, for the truth's sake and the old woman's sake, and I let myself think it for mine. I have commanded men in hard places. I have faced down mobs and magistrates and my own grief. I do not think I have ever, before or since, seen courage to equal Imogen Hart drawing a sheet over the face of a woman she had just autopsied with her own steady hands to keep from hanging. "Now," I said, and my voice was not quite my own, "we have how, we have when. We have a solicitor turned from the door and a will that died with her. We need only one thing more. We need to put my cousin's own hand on the bottle, and I think I know where to look for it." I turned to Imogen. "You said he rode out that Friday after you told him the solicitor was coming." "He did. He was gone the whole afternoon and came back after dark." "There is exactly one apothecary within a hard afternoon's ride of Harrowmere who keeps and sells foxglove," I said. "Old Mr. Perkin at the crossroads by Netherfold. And Mr. Perkin, Miss Hart, keeps a book. Every apothecary keeps a book, the poisons register by law. Every grain of anything dangerous, who bought it and when, signed for. If my cousin Roderick Ames put his name in that book on Friday afternoon, then we do not have a suspicion any longer. We have a rope, and it is round the right neck at last. But of course it is never so simple, and Roderick Ames, whatever else I had thought of him, was not a fool. We rode to Netherfold that very afternoon. I would not wait, and old Mr. Perkin brought out his poisons register with trembling hands, awed to have a duke in his little shop that smelled of camphor and dried herbs and dust. And there on the Friday was an entry, but it was not signed Roderick Ames. It was signed, in a cramped, disguised hand, J. Weller, groom for a farmer's use, dogs and rats. A quantity of dried foxglove leaf, purchased Friday afternoon. "Do you remember the man who bought it?" I asked Perkin. The old apothecary screwed up his face. "A gentleman, your Grace, for all he signed himself a groom. Fine coat under a plain cloak. Handsome, easy way with him. Said tweer for his master's dogs the mange, he said, and rats in the granary. I thought naught of it, foxgloves common enough for the farm. But he weren't no groom, your grace. Grooms don't have hands like that. Soft hands, that gentleman. And a great ring he'd not quite hid under his glove. Perkins' eyes went round. Did he do a murder with it, your grace? Oh, I'd never have sold it, I'd never. You broke no law, Mr. Perkin. The law that's been broken is a graver one than yours. A false name, a disguise, soft hands and a hidden ring. It was Roderick to the life, but a false name in a country register was not proof enough to hang a gentleman, not against a jury that would far rather believe in a wicked companion than a wicked cousin of a duke. I needed to close the last gap between a handsome gentleman in a cloak and Roderick Ames by name. The ring, I said. You said he had a great ring under his glove. What was it? Think, man. What did you see? Perkins shut his eyes the better to see backward. Red, your grace. A red stone, deep red like a garnet. Aye, a gentleman's signet, but the stone were a garnet, deep as wine. The floor of that little shop seemed to tilt under me, because my cousin Roderick wore no such ring. I knew his hands. I had watched them deal cards across my aunt's table for 20 years. But my aunt had garnets, a whole parure of them, and among them I remembered now with a terrible lurch, an old gentleman's signet ring set with a single great garnet, her husband's ring, which she kept in the same case as the necklace and the eardrops. The necklace they had found in Imogen's workbox to damn her. He had worn a dead man's ring to buy the poison. He had gone to his aunt's jewel case, the case he had access to as her nephew, as a trusted member of the household, in a way the watched and gossiped-over companion never truly did, and he had taken the garnets, some to wear as his disguise, foolishly, out of some gentleman's habit of adornment that could not be broken even for murder, and the rest to plant in Imogen's workbox, so that when the death was questioned there would be a thief and a motive ready-made, and no one would ever think to ask who else had been to the jewel case, because everyone knew that the poor companion had done it. It was, I saw now with cold clarity, a single, elegant, wicked design. Get the will changed before it could disinherit him. Kill her first. Do it in a way that looked natural, that he might have got clean away with had Ambrose's eye been a shade less sharp. And should it ever be questioned, have a scapegoat already dressed for the gallows, the penniless companion with the jewels in her sewing box, the obvious, satisfying, comfortable villain that a grieving household would seize upon in an afternoon. He had planned for his own failure. He had built himself a second wall behind the first, and the second wall was Imogen Hartsneck. Mr. Perkin, I said very quietly, would you know that gentleman again if you saw him? Anywhere, your grace, that easy laughing way of him, and I'd know the ring. Then you will come to Harrowmere the day after tomorrow, I said, and you will bring your book. I am going to give a dinner, Mr. Perkin, a dinner for my aunt's family and friends to mourn her, and I am going to ask you to attend it, not as a guest, but as a witness. Will you do that for the memory of an old woman who was poisoned in her sleep? The old man drew himself up. I sold the stuff that killed her, your grace, thinking no harm. I'll come. I'll not sleep easy again till I've set my part right. We rode back through the dusk, Imogen and I, with old Beckett dozing between us and the loose thread grown now into a rope. I had how, I had when, I had why. I had the poison bought under a false name in a disguise, and I had the garnets that tied that disguise straight back to the jewel case only the family could reach. What I did not yet have, what I meant to get at that dinner, was the last thing. Roderick's own face in front of witnesses, in the moment the whole design came apart in his hands. For a design so careful will hold under questioning. It will hold under evidence brought slowly. A clever man will explain and deflect and cast doubt. It comes apart only when it is sprung all at once in public with no room to breathe. I had learned that too in my hard schooling of men. You do not corner a fox by chasing it. You wait until it walks into the room, and then you shut the door. You've gone somewhere far away, your grace. Imogen said softly in the dark of the carriage. I'm setting a table, I said, for the day after tomorrow, and I'm thinking that it is a strange and terrible thing to plan a dinner at which a man will hang himself. I find I have no appetite for it, and yet I want it more than I have wanted anything in years. You want justice for her? Yes. I turned to look at her, the pale oval of her face in the swaying lamplight, and I said the rest of it because I had discovered, somewhere on the road between Wexford and Netherfold, that I could not seem to keep the truth from this woman, that being near her made me honest the way being near my aunt had once made me laugh, against my will, against my nature, against every wall I had built. And I want you never to have to stand against a wall again with footmen at your elbows, looking at the middle distance so no one will see you're afraid. I want that even more, Imogen. I did not know 3 days ago that I wanted anything at all. You have been a very inconvenient discovery. She was quiet. Beckett snored. The wheels turned on the frozen ruts. You called me Imogen, she said at last, very low. So I did, I said. I find I have been doing it in my head for some time. Forgive me. It is a liberty. I don't mind it, she said, still looking straight ahead, and I saw her hands fold and unfold in her lap. From you, I find I don't mind it at all. And then, as though she had said too much and must armor it in practicality at once, in the way I was learning was entirely her own. But we had better catch him first, your grace, before anything. It's difficult to, a woman under a charge of murder cannot, that is. For the first time since I had met her, Imogen Hart, who had autopsied a body to save her own life without a tremor in her voice, could not finish a sentence. We had better catch him first, she said again, and left it there. We will catch him, I said, the day after tomorrow, and then, Imogen, then there is a great deal I mean to say to you that I will not say to a woman while a rope is still theoretically about her neck, because it would not be honorable, and because I would have you free to answer me as a free woman answers, owing me nothing, cleared before God and the county and yourself. I took a breath. But I will say this much now, so that you may go into that dinner knowing it. You are the bravest, truest, cleverest soul I have met in my life. My aunt saw it 2 years ago, and I was too cold and too blind to see it in 3 encounters across a table. She was right about you, as she was right about everything, including me. And I do not intend to be blind any longer. Imogen Hart turned her face to the dark window so that I should not see it, but the carriage lamp was on my side, and it caught, just for an instant, the shine of tears on her cheek. The first she had shed since her whole world named her a murderess, and I understood that they were not tears of fear at all. I gave the dinner on the Wednesday, and I set the table with the care of a general setting afield. It was ostensibly a small family gathering to mourn Lady Adelaide before her burial, Roderick, of course, and 2 or 3 cousins, and Sir Rufus Callow the magistrate, whom I invited precisely because I wanted the king's justice in the room to see with its own fat eyes what I meant to show it. Dr. Ambrose I invited as a family friend. Mr. Foljambe the solicitor I invited on the pretext of the will. And in the small anteroom off the dining hall, unseen, I placed old Mr. Perkin the apothecary with his poisons register in his lap, and a footman I trusted to bring him forth at my signal. Imogen I placed at the table itself, in her own gray gown, in her rightful place as my aunt's companion, for I would not have her lurking like a suspect in a cupboard. I would have her sitting at the board in the sight of them all, and I would clear her in that same sight, and let those who had condemned her sit and eat the shame of it. Roderick came in beautiful mourning black superfine that must have cost more than a groom made in a year, and he was all easy grief, all handsome sorrow, pressing my hand, murmuring about the dear old lady, so sudden, so shocking. And on his little finger I looked. I had told myself not to look too soon, and I could not help it. On his little finger was a plain gold band. No garnet. He had put the ring back, of course. He had returned it to the jewel case after his errand, the careful fox, tidying his trail. But an apothecary's memory is a longer thing than a ring in a case, and I had counted on that. I let them eat. I let the wine go round. I let Roderick tell 3 anecdotes about our aunt well told, at which the table smiled sadly, and I watched Imogen sit very straight and pale and eat nothing, her eyes on her plate, enduring the presence of the man who had meant to hang her for his crime. And I loved her, I will use the word now, for it is the true one and I had it firmly by then. I loved her for the dignity with which she bore it. And then, when the cloth was drawn and the port set out, I spoke. "Before we part," I said, and the ease with which the room fell silent when I chose to speak had never served me better, "I must say a word about the manner of my aunt's death. For there has been an ugly rumor in this house that she was poisoned, and that Miss Hart, her companion, did the poisoning. I let that sit a moment. I called you together tonight because I have looked into that rumor myself these 3 days, and I mean to lay it to rest, once and for all at this table, so that it may never rise again." Sir Rufus swelled. "Your Grace, this is most irregular, a matter for the assizes, surely." "It will go to the assizes, Sir Rufus," I said. "I only wish to be certain the right person stands in the dock when it does. Dr. Ambrose, will you tell the table what you found when you examined my aunt a second time?" And Ambrose, grey and steady, told them. The manner of death. The hour it truly occurred near dawn, not at 9. The plain fact that the poison could not have been in the tonic Miss Hart administered at 9 o'clock, for the body would have suffered for hours and roused the house, and it had not. That the killing dose had been given later to a sleeping woman by a hand that came in the night. "Miss Hart gave the 9 o'clock tonic," Ambrose said, "and Miss Hart went to her own bed, and my lady was well when she left her. Whoever killed Lady Adelaide came to her afterward in the dark, when the companion was asleep on the other side of the house. It was not, it could not have been, medically it simply was not Miss Hart." I watched Roderick's handsome face as Ambrose spoke. He was very good. He arranged it into grave attention, into concern, into a faint, courteous frown of following along. But I had spent 3 days learning to read this room, and I saw the thing that flickered under it, a small, cold recalculation. He had not known the doctor would change his account. His first wall had fallen, but he had a second wall, and I watched him lean in his mind against it. "Then who?" said Sir Rufus, blustering, unwilling to let go his comfortable villainess. "If not the companion, and I say if, then who came in the night? The jewels were in her box, your Grace. We cannot simply—" "The jewels." I turned the stem of my glass. "Yes, let us speak of the jewels. My aunt's garnets found in Miss Hart's workbox. Damning are they not, except—" I looked up, and I looked for the first time full at my cousin. "Except that my aunt's garnets were kept in her jewel case in her own dressing-room, to which the companion had no more access than any servant less, for she was watched, poor girl, as companions always are watched. But the case was open to the family, to trusted kin who came and went from those private rooms without a second glance. A silence had begun to gather at the table, the particular silence of people who feel a floor shifting and do not yet know why. And there is a piece missing from that parure, is there not, Miss Hart? You keep the inventory of my aunt's jewels. Is the set complete as found?" Imogen lifted her head. Her voice was clear and did not shake. "No, your Grace. The garnet necklace and eardrops were in my workbox planted there. I never took them. But the gentleman's signet ring, the great garnet ring that was Lady Adelaide's husband's, is missing from the case still. It was not in my box. It has not been found. It is simply gone." "Gone," I repeated. "A man's garnet signet, gone from a case only the family could reach, in the very days our aunt was murdered." I set down my glass. "That is a curious thing. For do you know, on the very Friday before she died, a gentleman rode to Mr. Perkins's shop at Netherfold Crossroads and bought a quantity of dried foxglove, the poison that killed her, and signed the register under a false name, in a plain cloak, pretending to be a groom. But he could not disguise everything. Mr. Perkin remembered his soft hands, and he remembered one thing more, a great ring the gentleman wore, half hidden under his glove." I let the pause stretch until it was almost unbearable. A signet ring, set with a single garnet, deep as wine. The table had gone utterly still. And Roderick Ames, I will give the devil his due, he fought it. He reached for the old ease, the old laugh. Roderick said, "Your Grace, this is a diverting tale, but surely half the gentlemen in England own a garnet ring." "Do they?" I said softly. "Then you will not object, Roderick, to Mr. Perkin looking at the family assembled here tonight, and telling us whether he sees among us the gentleman who bought his foxglove. He is in the next room. I took the liberty. Bring him in." And the fox understood at last that the door was shut. I have seen men break in many ways. Some rage, some weep, some deny to the last plank of the scaffold. Roderick Ames did none of these. He simply stopped. The charm went out of his face all at once, like a candle pinched, and what was underneath was not a monster at all, only a small, cold, frightened, greedy man who had gambled everything on no one troubling to look, and had lost. He rose halfway from his chair as old Perkin was brought in blinking into the candlelight, and the apothecary, honest to his bones, did not hesitate. He looked round the table, and his gaze passed over the cousins and the magistrate and stopped dead on Roderick, and he said, "That's him, your Grace. That's the gentleman. I'd know that face and that easy way anywhere. Bought a lethal deal of foxglove off me Friday last for his dogs," he said. "That's the man." "It's a lie," Roderick said, "but there was nothing behind it." You've paid the old fool, Julian, you've." "I have paid no one." I stood. I let the whole cold weight of what I was, the thing men feared, come into the room, and I turned it, for once in my life, wholly to a purpose I was proud of. "You turned Mr. Foljambe from the door on Sunday and kept it secret because you knew she meant to disinherit you on Monday. You bought the poison on Friday under a false name in a stolen ring. You came to her room in the dark near dawn, and you killed a sleeping old woman who had loved you and dandled you as a child, for £18,000 and a house in Bath. And then this is the part I will find hardest to forgive, Roderick, harder even than the murder. Then you took an innocent woman, a good and gentle woman who had done nothing in her life but nurse the sick and sit with the dying, and you dressed her for the gallows in your place. You planted the jewels. You built her a scaffold so that you might walk free across it. You would have watched her hang and worn your mourning to the assizes and been sorry, so gracefully sorry, over the port." My voice did not rise. It did not need to. "Sir Rufus, there is your murderer. There is the hand that came in the night. I will swear to every particular of it, and Dr. Ambrose will swear, and Mr. Foljambe and Mr. Perkin, and I will spend the last shilling of my fortune before I let it be any other way. Take him." Roderick Ames did not run. There was nowhere in that room to run to, and I think at the last he knew it, and some final rag of the man he might have been kept him in his chair. Sir Rufus, purple and stammering and utterly transformed from the comfortable certainty of 3 days before, rose and did his slow duty. And through it all Imogen sat in her gray gown at the family table, cleared before them all, in the sight of every soul that had condemned her, and she did not gloat, and she did not weep, and she did not so much as glance in triumph at the men who had been so ready to hang her. She only looked at Roderick as they took him, with a grave and terrible pity, and she said the only words she spoke to him in the whole of it, she was afraid of the dark at the end. "You sent her into it. May God have more mercy on you than that, for I don't think I can find any." And then she looked at me across the wreckage of that dinner, across the length of the candle-lit table, and something passed between us that I have no words for even now, and did not need words for then. They buried my aunt 3 days later on a gray still morning with the last leaves down and a hard frost silvering the churchyard, and half the county came, for Lady Adelaide Sarton had been loved. Roderick Ames was not among them. He was in the county jail, awaiting the assizes that would, in time, do the law's grim work upon him. I will not dwell on his end. He is not the point of this story, and I have spent enough of my life on him. The point of this story stood beside me at the graveside in a black gown I had insisted on providing. no longer a companion under a cloud but an honored mourner. And when the first frozen clods went down, she slipped her gloved hand into mine, quite naturally, quite without asking, the way she seemed to do everything true, and I closed my cold fingers round her steady ones and held on, and did not let go, and did not care who saw. The house had changed toward her, of course. Nothing so transforms a household's opinion of a person as watching that person cleared of murder at the master's own table by the master's own hand. Mrs. Pell, who 3 days before had been so certain, now could not do enough for Miss Hart, brought her tea, plumped her cushions, told anyone who would listen that she had always had her doubts, always. You could see the girl was too good, which was a lie, but a comfortable one, and I let her keep it. For people must be allowed some way to live with having been cruel, or they will only grow crueler to smother the shame. Imogen forgave them all, easily, entirely, in a way I could not have managed and marveled at. They were frightened, she said simply, and grieving, and I was the easy answer. Frightened, grieving people reach for the easy answer. It's not wickedness. Most cruelty isn't wickedness, Your Grace. It's only frightened people reaching. I thought that was one of the wisest and most generous things I had ever heard, and I thought it in a churchyard beside a fresh grave, and I understood that my life had, without my quite noticing when, become bound up entirely and forever in the mind and heart of the woman holding my hand. That evening, when the mourners had gone and the great house had settled into its familiar cold quiet, I found her in the library, where she had gone to be alone with a book she was not reading. A fire had been lit. The frost ferns were already climbing the black windows. She looked up when I came in, and I saw her understand at once from my face why I had come, and I saw her set the book aside and fold her hands and go very still and very brave, the way she had gone still against the wainscoting on the worst morning of her life. But it was a different stillness now, a waiting one, a hopeful one, and it near unmade me. Miss Hart, I said, and then I stopped and I laughed low at myself, the second true laugh in 3 years and both of them hers. No, I have called you that too long and it was never right. Imogen, I told you in a carriage on the Netherfold road that there was a great deal I meant to say to you when you were a free woman, cleared before God and the county and yourself, owing me nothing. You are that now. Roderick is taken. Your name is clean, cleaner than half the names in that churchyard today, and I will call out any man who says otherwise. You owe me nothing. You are free to walk out of this house tomorrow if you wish, and I will settle a competence on you that will keep you comfortable and independent all your life, and you need never see me again, and you would be entirely within your rights, after what this family put you through. I took a breath and I crossed the room, and I did the thing I had not done for any living soul in the whole of my hard, cold, solitary life. I knelt. The cold Duke of Harrowmere, the most feared man in 3 counties, went down on one knee before a country physician's daughter in a borrowed black gown, and found it the easiest and most natural motion his proud body had ever made. Or, I said, you are free to stay, not as a companion, not as anyone's servant ever again, as my wife. As the Duchess of Harrowmere, and the mistress of this cold barn of a house that my aunt swore I would die alone in, she was wrong, Imogen. She is looking down at this moment, and she is insufferably pleased to have been proved wrong. I am asking you to marry me. I have been in love with you, I think, since you told me you were keeping a dead woman company so she would not be afraid, and I have been certain of it since you drew a sheet over her face with a shaking hand to save your own neck and thought first of her dignity. I am not a warm man. I do not know that I can learn to be. But I have loved you coldly and completely and helplessly for a week that has felt like a lifetime, and I would spend the actual lifetime learning warmth at your side if you will only have me. Will you have me? She was quiet for so long that a small cold fear crept into me, that I had misjudged, that gratitude was not love, that I had held her hand at a graveside and mistaken a drowning woman's grip on the nearest solid thing for the thing itself. And I would not have blamed her. I told myself I would rise and settle the competence and let her go, and be glad she was free even if it cost me everything, because loving a person means wanting them free more than wanting them yours. But then Imogen Hart slid down from her chair to kneel on the hearthrug in front of me, so that we were level, so that her grave gray eyes were exactly level with mine in the firelight, and she took both my cold hands in both her steady ones, and she said, "My father told me to listen to the body when the words and the body disagree. Your words say you are a cold man who cannot learn to be warm." A smile began, slow and sure, at the corner of her mouth. "But you rode through the night for an old woman's honor when it would have been easier to let an innocent girl hang. You called a physician's daughter to teach a doctor his trade because you cared more for the truth than for your own dignity. You knelt on this floor, Julian, you who have never knelt to anyone. Your words say cold. Your whole self, everything you have done this terrible week, says something else entirely, and I believe the body always over the words." Her fingers tightened on mine. "I loved your aunt. I think I have been coming to love you since you asked me in the anteroom whether I had done it, asked me, when every other soul in this house had already decided and gave me the dignity of answering. No one had given me anything that morning, but you gave me that. Yes, yes, of course, yes, 1,000 times yes, you impossible, cold, warm, beautiful man, I will have you. I will stay. I will be your wife, and I will learn to run your cold barn of a house, and I will keep you company in the dark all the rest of your life, so that neither of us is ever afraid of it again." And then, because she was Imogen, because she could no more leave a tender moment unanchored to the practical than she could stop breathing. "Though I warn you now, I intend to reorganize the still room entirely, and I shall want a lock on the poisons, and your Mrs. Pell and I are going to have to come to an understanding." And I laughed, truly laughed, the third time and the last time it would ever be rare, for after that day laughter came easily and often in that house that had been so cold so long, and I drew her into my arms there on the hearthrug, and I held her, only held her. Her cheek against my heart and my chin against her dark hair, tasteful and dignified and enough, more than enough, everything. Outside the frost climbed the black windows and the great house creaked in the settling cold. But inside, by the fire, two people who had each been alone in their different ways for far too long knelt together, and were, for the first time in either of their lives, entirely and unaffraidly home. We were married in the spring, in the little church at Larkhollow where her father had been physician, because she would not be married anywhere her people could not come. The county turned out in force, of course. Nothing draws a crowd like a duke marrying his aunt's companion, the girl who was nearly hanged, the physician's daughter who caught a murderer, and I found I did not mind the crowd at all. Let them look. Let them see the most feared man in 3 counties looking at his bride the way I have no doubt I looked at her. Let them learn the lesson I had learned so late and at such cost, that the person a whole house is ready to condemn may be the one truthful soul standing in it, and that it is worth any trouble, any 3 days, any lifetime, to be the one who troubles to look. My aunt did not live to see it. But I had her garnets reset, the necklace, the eardrops, and yes, in time, the great signet ring, recovered from among Roderick's effects and cleansed, I hope, of what it had been used for. And Imogen wore the garnets at our wedding, deep red as drops of wine, the very jewels that had been meant to hang her, worn now in triumph at her own bridal by the Duchess of Harrowmere. And when the vows were said and I lifted her veil and looked into those grave, brilliant, laughing gray eyes, I thought I felt my aunt somewhere very near, insufferably, gloriously pleased, saying, as she had said in that last letter, "You will die alone in this great cold barn of a house, Julian, and being for once and forever, and to my everlasting gratitude, entirely and completely wrong." I never did learn to be a warm man, quite, but I learned to be Imogen's, and that was warmth enough, and more than I had ever thought this cold life would hold. She kept me company in the dark all the rest of our days, exactly as she promised, and neither of us was ever afraid of it again.